Should we all be reading? I used to think that the obvious answer to this was yes, until a student challenged me on it once. He basically asked me, do you think that reading is more important than any other hobby that I might want to engage in and spend my time on? How do you know that you're not the one missing out because there's something you're not engaging in? Why do you think that I'm the one missing out more because I'm not reading for pleasure? And I realized that I didn't really have a clear answer for him. So in today's video, I have now done my homework, and I would like to share why I think that reading is special, that there's something different about it, and why I think it really matters. In some ways, what my student said was true. There's only so many hours in a day, there's only so many years in a lifetime. So why do I ascribe so much more value to the hobby of reading compared to so many other hobbies? Is that narrow-minded of me? Is that egocentric of me? Why do I want everybody to fall in love with my hobby? Now, I certainly don't think that we should be doing nothing but reading with our free time. I place a lot of value on trying to become a well-rounded person, and I think we should strive to pursue different things that could be self-developing in different ways. And I also don't feel like you need to be a reader in order to be a good person or to be an intelligent person. But then why do I place so much value on the practice of reading? Why do I think that we should all be trying to read? The student that day kind of forced me to interrogate my assumptions a little bit more. And I did end up coming back around to the same conclusion, that there is something special about reading. So what exactly is so great about it? Let's cue the list. Firstly, reading enhances our imaginations. And of course, there are many activities that can do that, but reading is especially effective at it, and it's one of the most low-tech things that you can do. I've got sources, so if you'll give me a sec. One 2025 study found that reading does a better job of nurturing the imagination than films do. Quote, reading stimulates mental imagery compared to viewing films, which has implications for education and society, opening up new avenues for future research and educational practice. The World Literacy Foundation has a simple explanation for why this occurs, so I'll quote them as well. Reading helps us practice imagination by letting the words describe a certain image, while the reader manipulates the picture in the mind. This practice strengthens the mind as it acts like a muscle. So reading enhances imagination, and then imagination sparks creativity. Creativity breeds innovation. So we can quickly see how this leads to a lot of personal benefits, but also societal benefits. Angus Fletcher is a neuroscientist who also has a literature PhD, and he studies what stories do to our brains. So he has this to say. The source of human intelligence is what we would call story or narrative, our ability to plan or plot to come up with innovative answers to problems. Ultimately, our creativity, our ability to innovate is kind of what separates us from AI. So just in case AI ever does take over, Dr. Fletcher does not believe that it will, but in case it ever does, you might as well start reading and train the part of your brain that makes us more human. So arm yourselves. Basically, my point here is that imagination is a critical property of being human, and storytelling fosters that. Speaking of being human, reading also enhances our understanding of the human experience. There's plenty of studies that have been conducted at this point about how reading, specifically reading fiction, can enhance one's sense of empathy over time. Game of Thrones author George R.R. Martin famously wrote, and this is like via one of his characters in dialogue, "A reader lives 1,000 lives, a man who never reads lives only one." So in essence, we'll never be able to explore all of the things that we would like to experience in one lifetime, but we can kind of do so vicariously through reading. When we read fiction, we put ourselves in someone else's shoes. We feel what they feel, good or bad. And even if we disagree with their behavior, we can at least come to understand why they behave in the way that they do. We can't all know firsthand what it would be like to experience all of life's joys or sorrows, but through books, we can at least get a sense of what it would be like to be exiled from your country, or like to suffer a miscarriage, or to win the lotto. And reading is more effective than watching a film or a TV series when it comes to empathy, because basically the same reasons we discussed before, it's more intimate. We live with that character. We create the scenes in our own mind and they become ours. Another critical benefit of regular reading is the degree to which it improves our attention span and our focus. And when has that ever been more important than right now in the social media smartphone age? In recent years, I feel like there has been an increased awareness of the fact that this constant stimulation and distraction is rewiring our brains for the worse. Like, I think people know that, but we also feel like Sisyphus going up the hill over and over again, or like we're just on this hamster wheel, because everything about the way that society functions right now is setting us up for failure on this front. I think people are seeking ways to combat their digital addictions, whether it's like going analog for a short period of time or like staring at a wall for as long as possible, see how long you manage. But ultimately, I think that developing a reading practice is one of the most effective ways to gradually increase your attention span. Because if eventually you can find that book that really hooks you, then we actually get annoyed by interruptions or distractions, not tempted by them. And that's the goal. Like if somebody comes up to you and starts to try to have a conversation with you while you're in the middle of a sentence, you're just like, leave me alone. Like I've read the sentence 3 times now. I just want to finish my book and then we can talk. Plus, being able to focus on one thing for a long period of time, like in a sustained manner, is something that has such critical real-world applications. Lastly, we know that reading for pleasure improves our vocabulary, of course. But if this were just about knowing more words and sounding smarter and like impressing people at parties or whatever, then this wouldn't count as one of the reasons to value reading above any other hobby. What matters most about this, though, is that in many ways, our thoughts or ideas are impacted by the things we have words for. Of course, thinking can exist outside of language, but our language does help to shape our reality. So it's really about what an increased vocabulary does to help expand our thinking. Here's a really simple example that I learned about recently. So obviously in English, we have the color category of blue, and then we might call something dark blue, we might call something light blue. But in Russian, and I don't speak Russian, so if there happen to be any Russians watching, feel free to correct me in the comments if this is wrong. But apparently in Russian, there are 2 different words for dark blue versus light blue. Obviously, we have different terms, like we might say navy blue or like baby blue or whatever, but we still consider all of those to fall under the general umbrella or category of blue. Whereas for Russians, those register kind of more as 2 different colors, like not necessarily under the same category. Kind of like how we have 2 different words for red versus pink. So even though pink technically is just like a light red, like you could call it light red, but we don't call it that, we call it pink. And therefore, those are 2 separate things in our minds rather than considering them both a version of red. I've actually got a little book that I have as a coffee table book about words in other languages that have no translation in English and that probably have no translation in any other languages. And that's really interesting because it's almost like you don't even have a concept for the thing if you don't have a word for that thing. And I find that just fascinating. Language is something that's unique to humans as a species. I think words are powerful, and I think that there's a real potentially transformative value to expanding our language abilities, and books help us to do that. Okay, this has by no means been an exhaustive list of the benefits of reading. Of course, there are many others, but what I tried to do was to pin down what, in my view, is sort of unique to reading. And I think that what they all end up having in common for me is that they point to qualities that make us human. I guess unless you're a sociopath, and then none of this applies to you. I'm going to close with a quote that's often attributed to Mark Twain, even though I couldn't actually confirm that he ever said this or wrote it anywhere, but I still agree with the sentiment, and that's this. A person who can't read has, I said that wrong. A person who won't read has no advantage over one who can't. Here's where I would go back and do like 17 more takes of this, but as per a couple videos ago, I'm battling the perfectionistic tendencies. I'm just going to leave it as is and close it out that way. So, do you need to read? No. Should you try to? I think so. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Should we be encouraging everyone to develop a reading practice? If so, why? If not, why not? And also, what do you personally think is special about reading? Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. A person who can't read, I said that wrong. Again, a reader never, a reader lives 1,000 lives. This is why I have it written down.